All right, today we are enjoying a day of celebration for golden wisdom of love, legends, and legacies. My name is Becky Norwood with Spotlight Publishing. We have Sandy Rogers, who is one of the two that this is their brainchild, their heart child. The second in the series of Guiding Grace. We have with us Cynthia Young and also Chris Peisling, and maybe one or two more will pop in and join us. Today's a day of celebration because this book is quite an accomplishment. There's many authors in the book, and there's a big heart and soul behind this whole thing. As with all books, there is just so much that goes into it. Cynthia, what's the name of your chapter, and why did you choose to be a part of this?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here and thanks for including me in the project. My chapter is called Healing Our Wholeness. And for me, it's the story of growing up disabled as a child, and all of the things that come with that, but how I guess I learned to hold people gently, as people aren't always sharing your same energy as you heal. So how to hold people gently and understand that they're reacting to things that are sometimes out of their reference and out of their realm. So really, it's a story of being a witness for each other, much like this book, and learning to understand really that people are just like you and just like me, and to hold that in our hearts as bearing witness for each other.
Beautiful. Yeah, very good. And so when somebody picks up this book, opens the pages and it falls open to your chapter, what do you hope they gain from your chapter?
What I hope for that is that people will see a commonality and that they'll see their own humanity, really as a mirror in other people, and to relax into the chapter and say, oh, maybe I had some of those experiences as well and that didn't feel good, but now I know how to hold that.
That's beautiful because it's really the power of stories that keep us connected, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure.
Beautiful.
It's our own narratives that we get to share with each other. So I highly recommend that folks pick up this book because there is something to resonate with everybody.
Yes, there's a lot of richness within the pages of this book, and the power of storytelling is what makes all the difference in the world. Thank you. How about for you, Chris? What's the name of your chapter?
The name of my chapter is Uncle, and it's kind of a tribute to one of my maternal uncles that I was very close to. He was 12 years older than my mother, and he kind of spoiled her rotten when she was a kid. And he didn't have any children of his own. And my grandfather died when I was 2, and so he took care of my grandma, so it was always grandma and uncle. So he was kind of a cross between an uncle, a second father, and grandfather. And
Hmm.
he was a very amazing man. He overcame a lot of obstacles in his life, and he was born in 1912 in western New Mexico, and grew up on ranches in western Mexico and eastern Arizona until he was about 10. And the family moved to Glendale, Arizona, and that's where my mother was born. And of course, in high school, he dropped out of high school when he was a junior. He thought he knew everything he needed to know, and it was the roaring 20s. And so he thought he was all good to go. And he soon found out that wasn't the case. And so when he was 19, he went back and finished high school. And then he had enlisted in the U.S. Army and was trained as a radio operator and attained the rank of sergeant before his enlistment was up. By then, the family had moved to Clifton, Arizona, which is in Greenlee County in eastern Arizona. And he took a job with Phelps Dodge Corporation, which had the largest open pit copper mine in the United States at the time. And he became a journeyman electrician for them. And yeah,
There's
and
quite a rich history with that, isn't there?
yes, there is. And so then World War II came along, and being a journeyman electrician, he was exempt from the draft. But
Oh.
he and his best friend, Fergie Ferguson, I never knew what Fergie's real first name was. Everybody's called him Fergie. they had made an agreement that if one of them got drafted, the other one would volunteer. And so Fergie got drafted, and so Uncle went back into the Army and he went in as a staff sergeant because of his prior training and prior rank. And so they both landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day, and they both survived the war without any injuries, surprisingly.
Wow.
I think Fergie went in on the second wave of D-Day, and my uncle went in on the 22nd wave. And then they were attached to Patton's Third Army, and they were sent to relieve the 101st Airborne Division in Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. And while they were en route there, they came under heavy shelling from German 88mm guns. And my uncle, being the operator, his radio operator on the half track, and he stayed with his radio despite the gunfire, the shells landing all around, and called in U.S. artillery that knocked out the enemy guns. And so he received the Bronze Star for valor.
Wow, that's amazing. So, what was his legacy he left you?
Well, he was a very kind and loving man. And the example he set for me is just, he was so kind to everyone. And he set that example for me. And when he got back from World War II, well, they had liberated the Buchenwald concentration camp too. And they never really talked too much about combat, but he brought back lots of pictures that he took of Buchenwald, and he had a direct testimony of the Holocaust. But when he came back from World War II, he was elected as the clerk of the Superior Court in Greenwood County, and then he paid for my mom to go to Arizona State College at the time. By the time they graduated, it was Arizona State University, and that's where she met my dad. And then after they graduated in 1950, they went back to Arizona and became teachers, and in Eastern Arizona. And then Uncle was owner operator of a small bar and grill, but that wasn't really what he wanted to do. And so at 44 years old, he went back and started working on his bachelor's degree at Western New Mexico University. And he commuted 90 miles 3 times a week till he got his bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. And then he got a teaching job teaching 5th grade at Duncan Elementary School. And they lived in Duncan. That was a little town in Eastern Arizona. And his didn't feel teaching was his real calling, though. And so he went back and got his master's degree in guidance and counseling. And then he became the guidance counselor and government teacher and driver's ed teacher in the high school.
Chris, can I stop you for a second?
Certainly.
What I read when I was reading your story, it was this path of evolution that he continued. I was so moved by Uncle that he continued recognizing he would accomplish something, and then he would evaluate it, and he would say, okay, there's more. And he would move on, and he would open up those opportunities, and he'd step into them. So I can imagine as a young man, you're watching this person in real time continue to make his life better and better and better. I was very impressed in terms of, and how you've applied that to your own life. But that story for everyone is Cynthia's. They're so moving because they're opportunities to learn about a bigger and better world, but also make it a bigger and better, like you say, love and kindness. Right. So it's a beautiful story.
It was very beautiful. So what do you hope that somebody will gain when they read that chapter of the book, your chapter?
An understanding that showing kindness and love to other people is something that is very important, and it can have far-reaching consequences and leave legacies that we're not aware of initially, but years later we find out the impact that had.
Very good. Appreciate it. Sharon, thank you for that, for stepping in, because you've known Chris for a long time, haven't you?
No, I haven't. I've never met Chris. He's Karen's
that's right. I was like,
I read his story and I knew him.
Yeah.
And like Cynthia and I are fellow feng shui, dignitaries, ambassadors of love and kindness, right? So when you read these stories, you know these people. I feel like Chris is a brother, Cynthia certainly a sister. So there's that community where we connect with that. And I was able to. We were supposed to be on our way to the great grandbaby, but she's being released from the hospital today. So I'm able to pop on, which I was so grateful for. In the meantime, you read Cynthia's story, and it compels you, like she said, you resonate. And how do you cope with it as a 6-year-old child? The whole world and what you did, and look at what she's done with her life. So there's that connection. And to talk about bigger and better, and it's not so much like bigger, it's the bigger heart. It's not like, well, let's just create this big world. No, it's the bigger part of ourselves that shows up.
Right, right.
Well, and we, if I can just say, we see ourselves as sort of this, when we're enveloped in something of our own that's personal, as this sort of giant event, and really in the universe we're this big, but together in our wholeness, which is why the chapter is called Healing Our Wholeness, is that we heal together as a unit, as a group. And that's as we heal ourselves, so goes the energy.
Yes. Well, it's our perception too, is how we see. And every time we operate, and like this whole book process has just been, as we know, this beautiful journey of joy, this amazing opportunity to bring these stories to the world that otherwise wouldn't be told. And I listened to the first, and I'll be backfilling on the other, but to, like Barbara Palmer said, the storytelling, and this is the bridge, and this is, we're all storytellers, and the stories that we tell ourselves. And you're exactly, so when we go through these experiences, somebody can gain through that. They won't have to necessarily, they will still have learning curves, we all do, but there's that heart. And when they understand, if I could just stay in love, as you know, I don't let anything outsource my joy. And again, this book, baby, is so beautiful the way that it's birthed. The labor pains have been amazing. They've been fabulous. and we grow, we evolve. So yeah, and we have those little tiny perspectives and viewpoints, but when we can open that up and start getting peripheral vision, we're reading a book, we're doing a book club right now. It's the decoding as far as the Dreamcatcher code. And there's a character in there, and she talks about braided. They're everything braided, and we're all braided together, and together we are stronger, and we're in community, and we have that humanity, but we have that heart and that compassion. Absolutely. Because we're all going to go through stuff. It's the way it is. I'm, like I say, today's my 74th birthday. I'm going, this is great. What a gift to be with such dignitaries and ambassadors of love. Yeah. So, and we're learning from each other.
Well, and if we stop learning, then where does that get us? We don't continue to grow. We don't.
I've known people that have become very bitter.
Yeah.
They've been upset and bitter and isolated because they haven't understood. Lean into that opportunity, celebrate it. Don't bemoan yourself and berate it. It is part of the journey. And there's that silver lining that's in that pocket. That what is that when we unfold that? And when we unfold it, it would be that golden part of the writerly process. That's that Legends and Legacies. Instead of having it shut us out and shut us down, I know we've all been that place, like, hey, we're not that person. We're going to ride this gauntlet, right? And that's exactly when we stop learning. But learning doesn't have to be that hardship. It can be that opportunity and that joy. When we decide that that's what it's a decision. We talk about choosing joy. Look at Uncle. Look at Cynthia. I mean, a child of embraces, and Cynthia, you were bullied for those things, and that just breaks my heart. This young child, and look what you did. You look who you are and what you've done, and look at Chris, how he's advanced. So these impact, like Chris said, we don't know the influence a lot of times we've made or the impact, and we go through life and we go, hey, but when we decide to show up with that golden wisdom, right, that we gain, it is a world changer. I'm just so proud of this book and all of you, all of our authors. It's what a joy and a privilege. And it is an oracle. You pick up the book anywhere. I just opened it up to Kurt Fowler's story on, you know, our mind affects our body, doesn't it ever? So there's so much, like Becky said, richness, you know, in those stories.
Beautiful. So, Cynthia, when we first got on, before everybody else was here, you were mentioning speaking opportunities using this book. Would you like to expand a little bit on what your kind of vision is for that?
Sure. Before I moved to Arizona from the East Coast, I did some public speaking for photography. So I really like getting in front of groups and doing the storytelling and talking with people. I recently met another woman who had a stroke at a young age. She was 29, I was 6. And we have a meeting coming up soon to talk about speaking opportunities, again, to get the story out there, to say, if you've had trauma, if you've had something happen to you, here's some thoughts on healing. This book not only lays out my story, but lays out stories of triumph and stories of allowance and acceptance, and to say life is not linear and it is not a straight line. And when, you know, just like in Feng Shui, we love it to meander, and when it sees an obstacle, it pings into something else, you know, and brings the energy. So I think by storytelling, you can resonate with people, and you can say, this is how I healed, this is how my new friend healed. We didn't take that obstacle as something to deter us, but to love every part of the journey and what happens, because stuff came up for me writing this book, stuff that I thought was buried, stuff that I thought was long gone, and it came up with roaring intensity. And I had to sit with that and say, what is coming up to be healed? All of these old wounds, all of these old things.
Sometimes we think we've long got it taken care of, and then at something like that, and can it be as simple as sitting down to write?
You know? Sure, and healing never ends, and to do the storytelling helps other people heal. So, you know, I don't have any details yet on speaking, but that is something that I'd really like to explore, at least in the local community.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we are so delighted that the two of you, along with Sandy and Sharon and I, that you've taken the opportunity to be a part of this whole journey, this beautiful book. You know, it's something, there's some amount of beautiful power that, you know, it's each of those little footprints that we put out on the world that start adding up and making a big difference, to be that ripple effect that we really need to experience, and the world needs to experience. And, you know, the legacy that you leave by having the courage and the wisdom and the foresight to say, yes, I'm going to contribute a beautiful chapter about Uncle to your own story about healing wholeness. Beautiful. Thank you for being a part of this wonderful journey.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for all your guidance.
Happy birthday, Sharon.
Happy birthday, Sharon.
Thank you. I'm 47. I saw it in the mirror this morning. I'm 74.
Happy birthday.
And happy great grandma day.
Very precious.
Great grandma day too.
Great grandma. Yes. My cup runneth over. It's called blessings.
Very blessed.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.